Okay, let's go.
Love should be multiplied, not divided. Hello there, sister wives, watchers, and chit chatters. As promised, we come to you with our deep dive of Meri and Kody's divorce and all the things that led up to it.
Yeah, it's been fun to look some things over. They definitely covered a little bit of it in the show, but it's been cool to take a scuba dive into Robyn's past life.
Yes,
We're learning lots of things.
we have learned a lot. We have the book now, so
Yeah.
we have this, which gives us a good background on Sister Wives until 2013, 2012-ish. It's been helpful. Obviously, it's biased because it's written by the sister wives. So there's some things in here that probably are either lightened up a little bit or, you know what I mean, just not as gritty, or maybe it might not be the whole truth because it's just everybody's different perspectives and it seems a little bit fluffy. But we will read it and eventually we might get into each part of the book and cover it for you guys. We just won't physically read the book to you guys, but we will cover different parts of it. So look out for that, but that'll probably come after our Love is Blind series is done.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to start off with Meri and Kody's beginnings, because why not start a divorce story off with how the marriage started?
Duh.
So Kody and Meri met in the late 80s, and Kody was about 21, 22. Meri was about 18, 19. It seems like they met, were friends for a little while, although in the book they just talk about how long they were friends, but we all know that they met and married within a year. So I don't know how long they could have been friends, other than maybe like 6 months, couple months, but they were originally in just a regular LDS type of church. Kody especially. Meri moved when she was about 5 years old from California to Utah so her parents could become polygamous. Meri did grow up in polygamy, but it took till she was about 10, 15-ish years old for her dad to actually keep and retain a second wife. He had a second wife before, but she left within 2 years. So Meri is no stranger to the faith, and she said that with her parents' influence and everything, that she did think that she was going to one day become a plural wife. Her mom was the first wife, so I think Meri always kind of knew she was probably going to be a first wife.
Seems like everybody too, except for Janelle, came from that type of lifestyle and family, and also decided that that's what they wanted. So again, a very intentional beginning, especially with Meri and Kody. I think they knew what they wanted.
Yeah, unlike what Kody tells us now, in the book, he said he fell in love with Meri. He thought that they were soulmates. And he had a lot of moments where he would be looking for the answer of, should I be with this woman? Should I not be with this woman? And he felt a calm over him that he never felt before when he stayed at Meri's house. He was very close with her family. So very different than what Kody tells us now of, couldn't stand that woman.
I mean, it's true though, even what we see on the show, to say that Meri and Kody were calm was never a statement. So
No, but it was in
funny.
this book.
It was. No, and I agree. I mean, the beginning is always very different from the end.
Right. They did date. They had a lot of friend dates and stuff like that. What cracked me up is that at one point, Kody and Meri were mistaken for siblings, which we've said that before. They could have been siblings.
I know. And the poor hairdresser. R.I.P. to the hairdresser.
R.I.P. hairdresser, wherever you are. Hopefully you're still in practice and you're still swooping.
I hope you're not.
But Meri's point of view and Kody's point of view are both pretty similar in this book. And Meri has maintained her point of view and Kody has kind of switched his up, which I think part of that is to kind of make up for where he's at now. It is pretty telling to me, though, that they didn't really stay just the two of them for very long. They added Janelle pretty soon after. I think they had maybe a year to two, a couple months to just be together. And when you have a fast courtship, you had a fast marriage, everything came together like that. I feel like they could have took more time to be with each other, but Kody would tell you now that Meri was driving him nuts, so we had to delude that marriage.
Yes. I think they both also knew that they wanted to be in plural marriage, but yeah, they probably could have courted a little longer, but married a little longer. But I do think it's kind of a cool thing, even though this is more larger picture, not Meri and Kody's relationship, but I do think it's very cool that the OG3 were all a married couple together before they had any children. I'm sure that that allowed them to build some kind of like foundation,
I don't
maybe a
know,
shaky one.
a 3-month long one, because apparently Janelle was only 3 months away from giving birth when Christine entered the family.
Right.
So, I
That's
mean,
true.
yes and no, but
We noticed that pattern when we were looking at the timeline in the book. I haven't read the book yet. Anne has been able to crack the book open and read it, so that's why she's kind of our book expert for now.
on these
We're
parts right now.
on these parts, yeah, only on these parts. We're just skipping ahead. But yeah, when we looked at the timeline, it looked like there was a birth and a marriage in the same year, and then that also happened with Robyn.
Mhm.
And Christine was pregnant the same year that Robyn, so another birth and a marriage in the same year.
It seems
So
like in Kody's world that when something's going to crap, a new human enters his life, whether it's
well,
a child or a wife. He just accumulates souls.
that's
Collecting souls.
collecting the souls of the children and wives.
Exactly. We're going to go from Meri and Kody's beginnings, which we all know are a little bit rocky. There's the whole ring situation, which we're not going to get too far into that, but we did learn on these recent tellings on Sister Wives season 18 that Meri and Kody had a ring together, and before Robyn came into the family, Kody soldered it down so Meri wouldn't have this hold on him. But I'm like, dude, she had a whole legal marriage hold on you. I don't think the ring is going to change the fact you're legally married to her. But it was a
True.
shady thing for him to do, was to solder down the ring. She asked for the ring, and he's like, well, it's gone.
I can't believe that. It still really makes me sad. I know there's a lot of points now where everyone looks back and is like, "Oh, that was the beginning of the end. That was the beginning of the end." But I really feel like that meant something, whether Kody wanted to admit it or not. There's no reason to just go and do that unless
Yeah.
it means something, and Meri was hurt by it, so not great beginnings.
Nope, and that's why we are where we are today. If they would have
Yeah.
took more time to date, maybe they wouldn't have gotten married. Who knows? Because according to Kody, he thinks that Meri suppressed a bunch of things about herself until they got married. That's what we hear from him today. I don't know if the Kody Brown from 20, 30 years ago would agree with him or not, but it seems like Meri was just a really shy person, and that's what she writes a lot about in the book, was how shy she was. She said that once she started kind of hanging out with Kody, people in her church where she has been since she was 5 years old were like, hey, are you guys related? And she's like, they're not even noticing me because I'm so quiet.
Right.
We go over to Robyn's beginning, and Robyn likes to keep her beginnings pretty vague. She did come from a plural family. She apparently started off in Utah, but somehow got to Montana in some way. I don't know how close these states are. I'm not a geologist or
I do
whatever.
think they're several hours away. I don't think they're connected. Wow, that's gonna be so funny for us
A
to think.
geographer, I guess that's my word.
Geologist,
So
or
those
that's
are
rock.
rocks. So her mom was a second wife, and she always kind of felt like she was going to live plural marriage. It seems like she's stayed in the same faith the whole time. Her husband at the time, David Preston Jessup, who goes by Preston, but he was also from a polygamous family. Some say he might be related to Christine. Either, I swear all these people are related, so I don't know.
Yeah, so David was related to Christine, and actually a close relation. They were like first cousins because
All
what is
red.
it? That family.
Mhm.
And that family, anyone who follows Sister Wives knows that that family is big in the plural marriage and like Mormon sect community.
Mhm.
They probably know a lot more than I do about all of this, but that's what I've learned essentially about
Mhm.
that family. I also know that David was Kody's third cousin too. It's crazy. It's like they're all
They're just interwoven in this web of plural marriage.
And David and Robyn both grew up in the AUB Mormon sect, which is the Apostolic United Brethren, AUB.
Yeah, which I believe they do practice plural marriage. I mean, obviously, Robyn grew up in plural marriage. I'm not sure if David grew up in it, but I'm assuming so because he's in the same family as Christine and possibly Kody.
Yeah, and what's interesting to me is, so they did both grow up in plural marriage. When they got married, though, they got a legal marriage, but not a spiritual marriage. They were not able to have a spiritual marriage. They were not able to get married in the temple because Robyn was pregnant already. And I guess either way, she was refusing to get married in that way. So that made the marriage legal, of course. It's a real marriage. But as far as having like a spiritual religious marriage, which also opens up the door for plural marriage, that was not an option because they didn't get married through the church. So Robyn says, and I feel like it's understood, that Robyn was in a marriage before that was also in the religion and open to plural marriage, but they just never took on more wives. But they literally couldn't, and Robyn basically chose it to be that way. It's weird.
It's a lot of conflicting stuff with her.
Yes.
Yeah, she says that her marriage to David was rocky and they couldn't take on another wife because they were having so many issues themselves. She married David when she was either 20 or 21, and then they ended up separating about 7 years later, divorced about 9 years later. So she was a single mom on food stamps. She was just scrounging around in Montana.
How she makes it out to be that she was very broke, very single, very destitute.
Yeah, she was just out here living in these streets, it seems. But she did have to conjure up herself an alter ego called She-Ra, who is my new favorite supervillain. And She-Ra would yell at Robyn whenever Robyn even thought about being with a man again. Robyn apparently promised herself that she was going to stay single, although I don't think it was for long. But she was going to stay single and not really date around. But if you think about it, Robyn got married at what, 2021, and she married Kody when she was about 30. So she's single for like less than a year before. I don't know.
She-Ra may have decided that she wasn't going to marry anybody, but Robyn, I think, just said she's going to be more cautious, more considerate, more careful when she dates, which I don't think Robyn was listening to Robyn or She-Ra or
Sasha
Jesus.
Fierce at this point, her Beyonce alter ego. I swear this woman, every time she talked in this book about possibly liking Kody or whatever, she's like, She-Ra was screaming at me at the top of her lungs. And I'm like, girl, you good? Maybe you should listen to her if she's screaming at you at the top of her lungs, damn near.
Right.
But Robyn does, in fact, meet Kody because she goes to go visit a cousin who is apparently, I don't remember if it was 30 minutes to 300 miles. I feel like two different things were said in the book, so I don't remember. But she went to go visit a cousin. They went to church together, and she was behind him in the pew, and she noticed his crazy hair, maybe the fact that the wife next to him had the same exact crazy hair. And she said that the moment he locked eyes with her, she felt a lightning strike to her. Like we've said a million times, y'all should be in creative writing classes because
you know what? We've been telling them to write a damn book. We just never bought the book.
Well, they need to write another book.
It's true. A better book, a more realistic book.
A book that's not 10 years old. So she met Kody at church, but she was trying to avoid him at all costs because She-Ra is screaming in her ear to stay away from him. She has these thoughts of, oh, he's probably stupid, blah, blah, blah. But she just was so immediately comfortable with him and attracted to him and all types of stuff. She said she didn't care if her next husband was fat or bald or whatever, that she would be fine with it as long as he treated her kids right. Well, she got a guy now with a flesh headband and a fake six-pack. So I think she got exactly what she wanted.
Womp, womp, womp.
So Kody and Meri seem to start pursuing Robyn, especially Meri. She meets up with them again at her cousin's house. Seemed like they were having some kind of get together at her cousin's house, and Meri and Kody show up. She said he showed up in his white little convertible, which we all know about his white little convertible. And she first was ignoring Kody because she just didn't want to give in to that attraction. And she mainly spent the day talking to Meri. And this is where I get confused with what Christine said in one of these last episodes of, oh, we always knew. But Meri and Kody definitely knew before telling any of the other women, for sure. Christine was told after some dance, and Janelle was told even after that. Meri and Kody kind of did keep it between themselves. They were pretty excited about possibly courting Robyn. They went to I guess polygamists have dances. I didn't know churches had dances for older people. And
Did you learn this in the book?
Yes. Robyn's cousin asked her to come back down for this dance. So Robyn comes down for the dance, and she at first didn't feel like it because her husband was big in the polygamy scene. His family was well known. So she felt all her dirty laundry was already out there. She didn't want to come back and be around these people too much because she felt kind of weird. She's a divorcee who's going to want to dance with her, whatever. And she says she was talking to Meri when she got to the dance. They kind of hit it off again. And Meri ran off, and then Kody came back and asked her to dance. So she thought it was a pity dance. But she said during that dance, during the song, they were talking so much that when it got to the point of the end of the night and they're doing a prayer, that Kody was like, oh, you got to excuse me. Like, I got to go do this. And she's like, oh, wow, we've been dancing for 10 minutes. I'm like, what song is 10 minutes besides Pillow Talk by Little Dicky?
Maybe they danced to a couple song?
They must have. It was supposed to only be one, but it turned into probably like 3. They both said that they were pretty entranced with each other in this dance. And I think that's when it all went to hell for everybody, to be honest with you. But
them damn Mormon dances.
so they had their dance. They ended up staying past the close. They were all talking, both Robyn's cousin Reba. I don't know why everybody in this family has an R name, but Robyn's cousin Reba and Kody and Meri all sat together past 2 a.m. When Kody and Meri went home that night, they were talking about Robyn into the wee hours of the night, and they were kind of conjuring up a plan, it seemed. Like, should we pursue her? Should we not pursue her? They thought there was something really special there. Kody says he got up in the middle of the night and just went out to the living room and had a whole moment. And
like that was his answer.
Yeah, kind of like his moment for Meri. With Meri, he had to fast for 2 days before he could get his answer about Meri. He seemed to have a similar type of situation with Robyn. So they go to church the next day, hoping to see Robyn there because he's like, well, she's as interested in me like I think she is. She probably would come to church hoping to see me again. And she wasn't there because Shira was apparently in Robyn's ear, and Robyn went home back to Montana with her kids. And Kody seemed to be upset about this. They talked to her cousin, and her cousin apparently calls Robyn up and was like, hey, you got to come meet the Browns again. You got to come meet the whole family. You got to come down here. Whatever. They're interested in you. And at first, Robyn was a little bit resistant, and she's asking for signs. It seems like all these people do all day is ask for signs before they make decisions. And
they do. That's why I asked if that was his answer, because they're always looking for some kind of sign for their answer. And sure, but
I do it a little bit too, but it was a little excessive. Robyn's signs were, if I should be thinking about this man, I'll just see his name appear somewhere at random, or it was stuff like that. And it was just getting a little bit much for me. But yeah, apparently Robyn's sign was when she asked her kids if they wanted to go on a road trip because it was a very long trip. If they would have said no, she would have stayed home. And if they said yes, she was going to go. And they said yes. So we can all blame the kids. Apparently, I don't know how that's a sign, though. I'm pretty sure if my parents came up to me and was like, hey, you want to go on a 3-hour road trip? I'd be like, yeah.
Right. Where are we going?
Yeah. I don't think the car ride or the duration would be a problem for me. I like road trips. So, I mean, I'll just go. I mean, I've driven to Michigan by myself. I don't know. Before this whole barbecue thing, Kody then decided to tell Janelle. Apparently, he told Christine after the dance. According to the book, when Kody told Janelle, she had a burning in her chest and she was overcome with emotion and started crying and said, this is it. Now, I don't know. This is according to Kody. I haven't read Janelle's part of that. Yeah.
Kody says that Janelle was overwhelmed with emotion as soon as she heard of it.
Yeah, she was just all about it. She thought that this was it. this was a sign to them. It affirmed it for her because she had this feeling in her chest. Like, maybe you're having a heart attack. I don't know.
Or acid reflux, damn.
So I have the book here with the blurb of Janelle's reaction. And if you guys want to look at it yourself, it's on page 74, Becoming Sister Wives. I'm not going to read too much, but I will read the short blurb about Janelle. So from Kody's point of view, he says, I approached Janelle first. I explained what had been going on with Meri, Robyn, and me, and what my feelings were. When I finished talking, Janelle had a surreal experience. She was overcome with emotion. She put her hand over her chest and said, oh my goodness, there's something special about this. This is supposed to happen. Tears welled up in her eyes. She said she felt a burning in her bosom. It was an undeniable affirmation.
She had acid reflux. I feel it right now.
I know. So that was from Kody's point of view in 2012 or 13.
Thank you. I didn't know that.
I didn't either until I read that today.
I can't wait to really get into this with everybody.
Yeah, we're going to do it part by part just for this reason. There's so many good things in here. So obviously, as we know, Robyn and Kody do get married. They have their spiritual marriage. I mean, it was what season 1 was about. She says that they had already signed up for the show before all this, but honestly, I think there was a bit of a courting period before the show was actually in place. So Robyn could have bowed out if she really didn't want to be a part of it. But as we all know, she did. So here we are with Robyn, her kids. And after, obviously, they went public, they had to move and they went to Vegas. This is only important because this is where a lot of the jurisdiction of everything takes place, is in Vegas. It seems that Christine was the most resistant. He says, I was moved by Janelle's reaction to my news. It made me giddy for Robyn's arrival. I had told Christine about Robyn the night after the dance. Christine expressed her disappointment that she hadn't stayed later to meet her, although I think it was more of her disappointment that we were going to add another wife because, as we all know, Christine wanted to be a third and final wife, is what she has said on the show, that I've heard her say on the show. So, like I said, a lot of this is like romanticized to fit a narrative in a way, in my opinion. But
well, I think you're right, because this seems to be told from each person's, really their individual perspective. And I mean, we're always a little biased when we're telling our own story.
So now that we know Robyn's beginnings and how the puzzle pieces started coming together, we move on to the allegations against David Jessup, or Preston, or whatever we want to call him at some point. So
probably both.
You'll hear David, you'll hear Preston, DP, whatever. So Robyn has claims against David. She's never fully said, I've been abused, but she has made insinuations. She said that her marriage was really, really bad many times.
She did say on Twitter in response to an episode one time that her marriage was abusive. Didn't say what kind of abuse, if it was physical abuse or whatever. I mean, abusive is abusive, and have a really hard time denying people's experiences. But I also have a really hard time being super gullible if there's not a whole lot of evidence about those things too. So it's kind of a sticky territory for me, but I'm also happy to just report what's out there and talk about it too.
When it comes to the allegations of abuse, whether it be physical or emotional, when she did petition, or he actually, I believe, petitioned for divorce, they said it was irreconcilable differences. And when it comes to custody of the kids, no one ever said anything about abuse. And I think that if there was abuse in the home, that would be mentioned to sway the custody situation. So I can't say it's neither here or there, but it is something to think about when it comes to all these custody things and adopting the kids. I think that things could have been a lot easier had she been like, I'm an abused woman.
Definitely. And that's why I agree it's important that we talk about it when we're talking about Meri's legal. When we talk about Meri's legal divorce, I think it does make sense to talk about these allegations because, one, I mean, they're questionable, but I think it probably plays a role into the mindset of the family because Robyn was talking about these things happening in her relationship with her ex-husband. So I feel like the family, the Browns, probably wanted to protect the kids from anything, obviously.
Right. And that is something they thought about if the kids were to go back with him. would they be going through whatever Robyn went through? It's just something that's going to play on your mind. You're only hearing one side of a story, though. So it's really hard to tell. David Jessup has never came out and said pretty much anything publicly about Robyn or Kody or anything. We've had sources say things or people close to him say things to either other YouTubers or to journalists, but we have never heard directly from the horse's mouth when it comes to all this stuff. So that's why it's definitely all speculation. You can't even get two sides of the story to even try to find a middle ground. Pretty much a lot of what we are talking about when it comes to allegations against David is just strictly from Robyn and whatever we've heard about Robyn or whatever has been reported on. It's not coming from David at all. Obviously, we all remember the infamous purity episode where Robyn decided to go into how her purity was stolen from her, which could mean that it was either taken from her by force, like as we all know how that can happen, or that she felt duped or something. I don't know. It's just a very clear allegation against him that either way, he had stolen something from her. Her purity was stolen from her, and she made a huge deal about it to the older kids. And I don't know if that was just dramatics trying to get them to practice abstinence, or I just don't know. That episode was a lot. I think we all remember her cries of purity.
Yeah, it was really strange. I remember actually when that episode came on the first time that I watched it, I felt uncomfortable watching her be emotional about her purity because, again, it's a sensitive subject, but she was married to him for a long time. I'm not saying marriages are happy. I mean, they can be awful, but I think that it's so weird. There's so many implications when you do that on television about your children's father
In front of them.
in front of them as a lesson in how not to go about life. It just feels like it invalidates the existence of her first three children. And she said as much before. In confessionals, I've heard her say things like, I wish that Kody was their dad, then they wouldn't be them. It's just, you have to find a way to accept what's happened to you and make sense of it or make it make sense in some way. But there's a lot of rewriting of history that goes on between Robyn and Kody. They really enjoy doing that. That's the way that they make it make sense. They just tell themselves that none of that was, legit. It's very, very strange.
There's two sides to everything, and we're only hearing one very interesting side, especially now knowing that Robyn has different personalities, like She-Ra and stuff. I don't know who's talking half the time. So Robyn makes all these claims, like the purity thing, especially in front of Dayton, I feel like is a weird thing, because are you trying to insinuate that maybe he came into this world that way and you only married this man because of that? It leaves more questions than answers. And of course, Robyn's not going to answer our questions. She just loves to leave us with more.
Yeah. And it's weird to me because there are times too where I've heard Robyn take some accountability and talk about how she changed her standards and then that's why she lost her purity. I think that that's probably more along the lines of what happened than some kind of SA or even coercive type of experience. I think she probably just decided she didn't want to believe that anymore. I mean, temptation is difficult and it seemed like she was just decided she wanted to do that and then she had regrets about it and that's okay. You can say that you have regrets about anything.
Yeah, I think Robyn talking about her stolen purity in part is out of embarrassment, because in their faith, it's not looked upon very well when you have premarital relations, especially if that results in another human. And it seems like that's kind of what happened with her. So,
Especially the kind that is successful.
yes. I can see why she's kind of making some of these allegations, but as we know, Robyn's really dramatic, so it's hard to tell what's real and what's not real, especially without David or Preston or whoever confirming it for themselves or speaking up for themselves at all. A lot of people would probably think his lack of speaking up for himself might affirm a lot of what Robyn says. But I also believe in, if you don't pay attention to something, the story will die down or go away. And honestly, he can't really compete with TLC money. Back then, there wasn't really YouTubers and stuff talking about things. There wasn't really podcasts and things he could go on. I don't know. It just would have been him against the TLC machine and Robyn. So I can see why maybe he didn't want to take that route. Might not have also wanted to put his kids in that weird situation of who's right and who's wrong. Just a lot of things to think about there. So maybe he's also not trying to air out his dirty laundry on TV like the rest of them. Who's to know?
Yeah, I mean, TLC had a major interest in keeping Robyn's kids around and having consent to film those kids as well. So I think they definitely contributed to the lawyers, if not paid for the whole thing. And that's got to be really intimidating. And then all of this is kind of swirling right after she's implying all these things about her purity to her kids. It's kind of nasty.
Yeah, and I guess we'll kind of get into that. David did not really want the kids to be filming, which is in part, I think, why they were kind of leaning towards adopting the kids, because then they don't have to get his permission to film, because you need both parents' consent to film. And then there's his lack of visitation, which Robyn has constantly sung about on the show. Has said he doesn't try to call, doesn't have visitations, although there have been leaked texts where David would try to call and Robyn just wouldn't answer and say they were filming. And who knows how many times that actually happened. So I don't know. It's hard to say if he was actually a negligent father or if he just didn't really get much of a chance because Robyn ran off with these kids. Now, I do think there is some truth to some of these abuse allegations only because marriages don't just end if they're great. So
Right.
it ended for a reason. It could be on either end, though. I believe he was the one that filed, if I remember right, but
For divorce.
yeah.
So he was the one that filed. I guess it was at the urging of a lot of his family members, but he filed after Robyn had left and not legally separated, but she had already separated herself and the children from him at that
Mhm.
point. So I think the family probably urged him to get a divorce just so that they could start getting custody situations going and he
Yeah.
could start seeing his kids, I would imagine. But yes, he is the one that filed, but Robyn separated herself. I don't know exactly how long
Right.
before, but beforehand.
We'll never truly know what went on in that marriage. All we can
Yes.
do is speculate. We do know that he was very behind on child support. It is alleged that he was told that the child support was done. They were making a lot of money off TLC, so she possibly told him that you don't need to pay child support anymore. I got it taken care of. And then he looked and he was 30 grand behind, which was also an incentive for him to sign away his rights.
Mhm.
So they were really
Yeah.
pushing for him to sign away his rights. Kody made an offer about some medical bills and the back child support, apparently offering up 60 grand in total because Dayton was in an accident where he got very hurt. He was on either a dirt bike or a TV or a four-wheeler and he had an accident. Robyn claimed on the show or insinuated on the show that he was with David, but he was actually in Vegas at the hospital, and David lives in Montana. So I don't think that if there was an accident in Montana, they would have airlifted him to Vegas for no reason. I
No.
think he would have just been seen in Montana. And apparently, there are text messages between Robyn and Preston where she's trying to call him, and he says, can this wait till tomorrow? And she says, no, it's urgent. And that was when he had his accident. So in court filings, Robyn was claiming that he did not want to pay these hospital bills, but he was trying to figure out why he should pay them when he wasn't even involved.
Yeah.
And he also didn't have the money like Kody and the rest of them had with TLC and their backing.
Yeah.
So this offer from Kody makes it even more questionable in these court filings too. This is all in court filings that Kody offered the $30,000 of child support he wouldn't have to pay, and he would just cover the medical bill. And it's alleged that Dayton was with Kody when the accident happened. So yeah, when it comes to the whole adoption, lack of visitation, child support, it all seems a little bit intertwined. It's painting a narrative of David that he's a negligent parent, doesn't want to see his kids, doesn't even care to pay for his kids' medical bills. Even when Dayton and Aurora and Brianna went to visit him, Robyn, in text messages, was upset that he was asking Dayton questions about the accident and cornering him. But at the time, Dayton was like a teenager-ish, maybe 12, 13. And I think it's pretty okay to ask your 12, 13, even 10-year-old, what happened to you?
Yeah.
Because you can't just always trust the other parent. I mean, especially when you're dealing with sobbing Robyn and she's up here saying all these things about you on TV. Like, what are you supposed to believe? I would believe my son.
Mhm.
There's just a lot going on there. But yeah, the adoption is something that Kody and Robyn were starting to fight for. And as we are into the adoption option part of our deep dive, we don't know if this was something off camera that was discussed amongst the sister wives and Kody about the adoption and what that would entail, how they would get there.
So my theory, just based off of what's presented on the show, and obviously we know that there's more to that, but I know in the previous seasons, before all of this really came up about even considering adoption, everybody was considering what it would be like if Kody were to die. And there was a lot of emphasis from Kody on the fact that the sister wives needed to have a close bond between all of them so that they could continue to be a family upon Kody's death. So I'm wondering if all the sister wives at the time were kind of thinking about what would happen to their kids, because there was a lot of talk about that on the season. So they were talking about those things consistently. In the OG3, we're talking a lot about how much comfort they felt in having this plural family, because they know that their children, yes, would have a loss, but that they still have other moms that have raised them since they were babies. And I imagine Robyn was probably thinking, what would happen to me if I die? And next person who has legal claim on the oldest three children would be their father. He has a parental custody agreement established. He has child support established. He's not paying it, but he had all of this stuff is established. He's on birth certificates. He's the next legal option.
Mhm.
And I think they'd been married for 4 or 5 years by the time the adoption happened. So the kids at this point had really adjusted, I'm sure, in a lot of ways. So I think it also made sense to the Browns in general that if they're going to take over anyone else's kids upon the death of a mother, that they would take over Robyn's kids upon the death of Robyn, but that they would run into legal issues when it came to that. So I think that that was also an underlying thing that came up because they were exploring what would happen if one of them were to die.
I can see where that's a factor with all of that. Although it might only be right that they do go to their father if there is no ill relationship there, if there's no reason to not go with their biological father. And it's
Mhm.
not saying that they're all going to drop dead right now. I mean, look, they lasted a whole other 10 years so far after. So it's good to have a plan in place, but it seems like Robyn and Kody might have fixated on it.
Yeah.
And
Oh, they definitely did, because, I mean, there's nothing documented. Again, all these allegations against David that we just talked about, we also made an emphasis that none of it was documented in their divorce. None of it was documented anywhere. It was just something that she said after she married Kody, and sounds like had a lot of regrets about the 10 years of marriage she spent with this other guy.
mhm.
So I think it's definitely plays a role. They did not want David to have these kids, and there's nothing that says legally that he can't, that he doesn't have claim to these kids if something were to happen. And
Right.
they were fixated on it because they did not want David anywhere near the kids.
Right, because according to the sister wives and Kody, they're getting Robin's side, and he was a bad, bad man to them.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not sure if any of them ever met him. I know he's like a first cousin of Christine, or he was related to Kody, but who knows if they actually met him or not. I mean, it's hard to
Mhm.
judge people that you've never met, but it seems like they were truly going off of Robin's word and her experience. They all wanted to adopt the kids, but it didn't seem like they were actively pursuing it. Robyn might have been looking into her options, but that all must have been off camera.
If they're considering adoption, I think the very first wall that they run into is that they're not legally married. Robyn and Kody are not legally married. So Kody has no legal claim to these kids, especially not one that would come even close to a father that's alive and, as of on paper, cares to be around and contributing to his kids' lives too. So yeah, I think that that is also kind of a contributing factor to the whole divorce. I think everybody started to realize, as long as Meri is married to Kody, there's no way that the family is going to gain any rights. if Robyn's not around. If Robyn's
Right.
around, everything's fine. But if Robyn poof disappeared, passed away, whatever, there's no way unless we get to this offer that Meri gives.
And Robyn's only passing away from a heart attack or a sobbing episode, I swear. That
Yeah.
would be her most likely option. I've never seen that girl do anything risky.
So true.
Yeah, but Meri apparently, after the apothecary people leave, I don't even know. This was like literally the same day or the next day. She decides to go to this random meeting with a lawyer. She's kind of teasing it when she walked out, too, like, oh, I gotta meet with a lawyer about something. And then just tells us, anyways.
I
Yeah.
hated that whole scene. I got so annoyed watching her be all like, I'm gonna go see a lawyer today. Oh, why am I going to see a lawyer today? I don't know. Might get divorced. Feeling cute. Like, I was like, leave us alone. If you're gonna sit over here and be like, this is for the children and everything is so serious, then don't sit here and tease us as if you're gonna leave Kody. Ooh, stop.
It makes me wonder if she was already talking to the catfish around this time. It really could be possible. We're going to do a whole different episode on the catfish. So we're not going to dive too deep into that theory, but it is possible that Meri already did kind of have a couple toes out the door with this catfish person. Because, I mean, it is so close in the timeline to each other.
Mm-hmm.
But Meri also said recently that the marriage was crumbling long before the divorce. Although when you get into the tell-alls of this season, the divorce strengthened the marriage. So I don't know which way is up and which way is down with these people. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, again, we'll get into, I think, a deeper dive of that whole catfishing situation too, but I feel like the legal divorce definitely gave Meri her own permission to dabble in places married
Mhm.
people shouldn't be dabbling.
Yeah, so apparently before Meri even tells Robyn and Kody about this, she mentioned it to Leon, like, offhandedly, and Leon wasn't really a fan of it, and we know this because when they eventually do tell Leon, she talks about how she has already mentioned it to them before, and that kind of puzzled me too. I'm like, "So, you want me to believe that Leon knew before Kody?" So I do think there was some talks behind the scenes with Kody, Meri, and Robyn. I don't think this was just sprung on Kody and Robyn like they want us to see in the scene. As we
You
know,
know,
sometimes things are set up.
I kind
So
of do believe that almost a little, only because when we get into the actual divorce day, when the divorce came in on the email and it was finalized, she called Robyn in there first before Kody and told Robyn about it, and Robyn was like, "This is inappropriate." I think Mary's just been done with Kody.
maybe, but I feel like she would have at least told Robyn before Leon or something. I feel like this would have already been a little bit discussed, like, what if I did this? Or I don't know. I can't just believe that Meri, all of a sudden, after the apothecary people left, she's like, I'm gonna go to a lawyer. And then I'm just gonna do
I
all this in a day.
Who knows, right? Nobody knows what happened. I think Mary looked at herself like everybody else did, kind of as a single mom. And so I think her first priority maybe was her child. So maybe
Mhm.
she did just want to get an idea first before talking with the adults who would get things moving if they agreed, regardless of what her child said. Maybe
Mhm.
she wanted to just include Leon first. Like, is this
Maybe.
something that would break your heart? Because if I go to Robyn and Kody and they're on board, they're gonna move forward regardless of what Leon says.
Maybe. I'll give Mary the benefit of the doubt on this one. But yeah, so Mary does meet with the lawyer. She asks
Alone.
him, yeah, alone. She does ask him a lot of the basic questions. If I do this, will he have an easier time adopting the kids? The same thing. It seems like that whole scene was just made for TV because I think Mary already knew all the answers to this. I'm sure if she had been thinking about it as long as she has been, according to her, that she's already looked this stuff up. I don't think you need to actually make a visit to the lawyer to figure out these answers.
Mhm.
But she meets with the lawyer and then immediately decides to come home and tell Robyn and Kody her plans, which they seem shocked but not shocked. I don't know. I
Mhm.
just felt like they weren't surprised enough for me.
Yeah.
I mean, Robyn's always emotional, so I can't ever tell with her, but Kody just seemed like, oh, okay.
I know. This is the beginning of him downplaying this whole situation now. He wants it to just be paperwork shuffle, something that was
Mhm.
quiet, that was just basically like a formality, not an actual thing to celebrate or anything like that.
They were all pretty settled on it. It seems like the moment she told them, they were already making plans, setting up an appointment with a lawyer to come finalize everything. And this whole divorce thing was supposed to mean for Meri and Kody that they would still be married, but that the legal divorce would just make way for Kody to adopt Robyn's kids. That was apparently the only and main focus. We all know that in the long run, Kody says that this was the breakdown of the marriage. He says that this is the true beginning of the end, especially for him and Meri. I think that legal marriage not only had a hold on Meri, but it also had a hold on Kody. It made him accountable to actually work on his other marriages because, according to Kody, he fell in love with Robyn and only wanted to be with her from the moment he got with her. I mean, this is Kody now saying this.
Yeah.
So
his rewriting of history.
Right. So if Kody would have had this legal marriage with Robyn 10, 15 years ago, he probably would have lost his will to work on these marriages with everybody anyways. I think he started losing that will once he got this other legal marriage. Once he dropped Meri and picked up Robyn, I think that's what changed for him. They do go to tell the sister wives, both Janelle and Christine, and they do this at the same time at first. And they do this only with Meri and Robyn. So Kody is not there for the initial telling of the sister wives, which I do think is weird. He's a part of it, so I think that it would only be right for him to be there.
The
But I
thing
guess
to me is like Kody is all of it. If we're sticking with the whole, this is about the kids so that Kody can adopt the kids. This is about Kody, and then this is about the kids, and then this is about the sister wives in any capacity of their relationship. So I thought it was so weird.
It was really weird to me that he wasn't there at all. And maybe that's why Janelle didn't have an initial reaction. It seemed like she was just processing.
I think they kept setting it up this episode to make it look like Meri was going to leave the family. Like, kept trying to give everyone the gotcha moment. Like, Meri's going to get a divorce. And they wanted someone to be like, oh, I knew you guys hated each other. like, they kept setting people up for that moment. I think that that's what this was. If I remember, I haven't seen this scene in a couple of weeks, maybe a month. But if I remember, everyone was pretty tense in that whole gathering around at Meri's house waiting to hear whatever kind of news, and then she's like, yeah, so I'm gonna get a divorce so that the kids can get adopted. It's like, come on, this is weird.
Yeah, Christine has a reaction that I wasn't expecting, which was that she was immediately so happy, crying, hugging Meri, saying, acting like Meri was a complete saint, which Meri is a very strong individual to offer up a legal divorce for another woman. Although it's not for her, it's for the kids. I understand that, but it's still gotta be a knife to the kidney.
A complete knife to the kidney. And honestly, that's why I think it's important that we cover this. It's kind of like a love letter to Meri in a sense. It really was something for her to do this.
I'm not sure the other wives would have done that. I mean, maybe Janelle, but I don't know if Christine could have done that. I think it was easier for Christine to be happy for Meri because she wasn't thinking about the assets or anything else, and she never had the legal marriage, so she's probably like, who cares who's got the legal marriage? But Janelle was sitting there kind of shook. The only thing she could talk about was taxes because she's got to think about the logistics, right? She's thinking about taxes. She's like, oh, can you just wait next tax season?
That's the only thing she said. I died.
Well, she's the one doing their taxes and messing with their finances.
I'm mad like they didn't even ask me. They don't even consider this.
I mean, if you think about it, they did this when they brought Robyn into the family. They told the other sister wives when it was already kind of in motion. So this is another way that Kody, Robyn, and Meri did their own little side thing. And then now they're going to come to the sister wives again. This is like the second time they've done this.
I mean, if we really look at it, though, when she told them, there was nothing on paper yet. I don't know the order of weeks afterwards. It had been a couple of episodes, so I'm guessing a couple of months at least. And that was Janelle's thing. She's like, couldn't you just wait a couple months? So I think Janelle also didn't have all the information. I wonder if she thought that divorce papers were already signed and things were already happening because they weren't even close to that yet.
Well, they weren't very descriptive about it. And either way, they weren't asking their opinions. They were telling them what was going to happen.
Yeah.
So it's not like they were really giving them much of a choice to even voice their opinions. They're just like, I'm going to be doing this, so this can happen.
I'm not sure how much standing they would have if they wanted to protest about it anyways. It's not their marriage or
Uh-huh.
their kids. I do
Absolutely
think
not.
Janelle's later reaction when she's talking to
Mhm,
Kody on the couch,
mhm,
I do think that she has a right to say what she said there when she asks about nothing's going to change unless you change. I do think they have a right to ask questions. One of me and Anne's favorite quotes ever in the world, and we share it back and forth together all the time, is I'm not a ride or die. I have questions. Why do I gotta die? Where are we
mhm.
going? Like, we have questions, and Janelle has questions. I think that those are perfectly rational questions, but I don't think they would have any standing to be like, I detest this or this is not happening. It's not really
Right.
their stuff.
Well, then that would just shift all of Cody's anger to that person. Either way, if they even had any inkling of this doesn't feel right, it wasn't going to work out. Like you said, it wasn't up to them. It's up
Yeah.
to Meri, it's up to Kody, it's up to Robyn. They're really just being told about it because, well, they have to. They have to know. I mean, Janelle does do the taxes, so they, they have to know. I think that's also why Christine just didn't really, and not that she didn't care, but that she wasn't as emotionally or even logistically feeling like this shouldn't be happening. At this point, I don't know where her and Kody were in their marriage, but it seems like she just was there and
Yeah.
she was just okay with whatever. If it's about the kids, she's happy it's about the kids. She knows it's not a big thing. They do actually take the next step and go to the divorce in the same episode. This is all in one episode. It was wild to me. I'm like, wow, you guys are really fitting it all in here. Just in the beginning of the episode, Meri was just going to talk to the lawyer, and now she's wearing the same coat as Robyn, going to sign the divorce papers. They're wearing the same fit.
That's true. And I think that episode also progresses into the first episode of the very next season.
Hmm.
But yeah, they go right over there and start the process.
Yeah. They start doing the paperwork with the lawyer, and Meri is obviously conflicted, which I feel like anybody would be conflicted. I don't know why Meri keeps saying this whole thing of, I wasn't expecting my emotions to be like that. Girl, expect it. You're
Mhm.
literally ending a legal marriage, which I get you're in polygamy and you don't give too much warranty to the legal marriage, but it is a thing. You did it 20 years ago, and it's got to be weighing on you to just end it like that. And it also, like I've said in other videos, might mean that he could just drop you off at any time and not try to work on things with you because there's no real ties there besides spiritual ones. If Robyn only had a spiritual marriage with David Jessup, there we wouldn't really be here in this situation.
That's very, very, very true.
So the legalities of a marriage do have ties on people, regardless, whether it's splitting the assets or whatever. Some people say that maybe Meri was intentional in the divorce because that would take Kody's name off a lot of her assets. It would give her her own identity. Because remember, when they did bankruptcies in the past, she had to file with Kody. And now she doesn't have to do that. She doesn't have to actually legally attach herself to him anymore in the assets. I really don't think she thought about it that way. I think maybe nowadays she would have, but back then, I think she was trying to do anything she could to appease this man. Meri was a rule follower and she was trying to keep him around. I honestly think that's part of why she brought Robyn in to begin with, to spice things up, you know,
Yeah.
get herself a friend, and hopefully maybe Kody would love her more for bringing in another wife. She's a scout. Meri's signing these papers, and I couldn't help but feel bad for her because she's sitting there crying and having a moment, and it was sad. It was sad to watch.
The lawyer says, hard life. What? That is not comforting. That's not comforting at all, sir.
It was
This
killing
is
me.
a hard life. And then Robyn wants to defend it by saying, like, said something along the lines of, like, there's no other woman that could go through this. Yeah, because most women are not crazy enough to give away their whole entire husband to a whole nother person and then still carry on as if nothing has happened.
Yeah. Especially someone 10 years younger, half
Yeah.
the size. Come on. She was already at a disadvantage doing this. Meri was
And I
very
get
strong
that.
to do that.
Yeah. I get that the focus is on the kids, and I will give credit to Meri and Kody. I think that they both tried very hard, at least to the public, to present the focus that this is about the kids. This is not about anything else. Kody even went as far as to, like, get angry at the word divorce when he was signing the papers. He's like, "All this legal language and legalities, this is eternal, blah, blah, blah." Like, it's just kinda crazy for them.
This was where I learned his middle name, and his middle name is Win. It's like, Kody Win, he's been losing all this time. So
Well, I'm not laughing.
That was his dad's name.
they signed these divorce papers, and Kody and Meri seemed to go off on a date afterwards, which I think was appropriate. I think they needed some time alone together to digest what was going on and what was happening.
When they walk over to the car to go on their date, they walk past a wedding chapel. It's just so ironic.
Wow, man, it's gotta be another knife to the kidney.
A knife in the kidneys.
Knife to the kidney.
They're taking a machete to these kidneys, I swear,
Oh
with
my
all
God,
this.
I know. The
Yeah,
sacrifices Meri has made to love Kody.
Wasted.
so they're having dinner or lunch or whatever it is, and Mary's telling him, I wasn't expecting to have all these emotions, which again, I'm like, girl, you should expect to have these emotions. Even though it's just legal, you are still legally ending something that you are attached to, just like when he soldered down the ring. It's the same kind of commitment and the same kind of physical object that's being taken away from you. Your marriage license is a physical object that you can pull out at any time. If something were to happen to Kody, you were the one making the decision whether to pull the plug on him or not, and now you don't even got that option. So, I mean, it's changing a lot in your life, regardless of if the marriage is going to be the same, even though, as we know from Meri now, at the time, way before the catfishing, their marriage was falling through the cracks. I think that just could have also affirmed to Meri, what am I going to do if we just don't get better? I'm just going to be what? In isolation for years. And that is what
Mhm.
happens with her, but whatever. After the divorce day, we go to the secret marriage, the not so secret marriage, because Kody and Robyn and Meri apparently have this fetish about talking about things at a picnic table when they're all together. So they're at a picnic
Secret thing.
table talking about whether the divorce is finalized or not. And they call Meri over to discuss the wedding plans. Robyn wants Meri at the wedding, even though Meri at first does not want to be there. She's like, how about you guys just go do it? And I don't even got to know the day or whatever. And nobody is sensitive to her about that. Even Cody's like, you don't want to be there? And I'm like, why
Mhm.
does she want to be there? Give
Yeah.
the woman time. She's already made so many sacrifices to love you. You should let her just sit home for the day. Tell her later that it already happened. Why did you gotta remember what day it was? If she's anything like me, which I remember dates and stuff, I'd be looking at the calendar like, oh, it was X amount of years ago today that my husband married another woman for real.
I totally understood her position and what she was trying to say to Robyn and Kody about not wanting to be involved. But I also understood where Robyn was coming from initially, saying maybe this is a day that we can celebrate family unity or whichever. I get where they're coming from in the sense of where they were at that time. I thought that it was so confusing because they left the conversation on it seemed like Robyn and Kody were on the side of trying to convince or pull Meri over to say, you should be involved. We're a team. We started this whole thing together. We want the kids to be involved and we want it to be a day. And then, like, the next scene or like a couple weeks later, Kody completely changes his mind. And this is why I get all confused all the time. Why, like, Meri, yes, we make fun of her about going back and forth with leaving Kody for real and things like that, but Kody gives Meri such mixed signals. It's just insane. Like,
Everyone.
it's true, everyone, but I feel like especially Meri. I feel like he's
Mhm.
never been straight up with Meri. Even when he is straight up with Meri, like in this situation, sitting down at the picnic table, hey, we want you to be involved. We thought that this was a team thing that we all did together. And then literally several weeks later, you just sit down and you're like, well, what I've decided is that this is just going to be a quick thing. And we're just going to go do it. It's going to be sealed and nobody's going to know the
Right.
date. Which
Well,
again, I think that that's the way it should be. But the fact that they did this whole thing and tried to make Meri feel like she needs to be involved and have her open herself up and be vulnerable emotionally to seeing this happen, And now all of a sudden you're like, no, it's just going to be the secret thing between us.
Well, I think part of why his mind changed is because of the snowball effect that was happening. It wasn't just him, Meri, and Robyn. Then all of a sudden the kids were involved. And then all of a sudden Janelle and Christine were involved. And then all of a sudden it was a whole wedding. They were talking about getting an Elvis impersonator. And he's like, we already had a wedding.
That was Mary's attempt to try to actually downplay it. She's like, can we do like a drive-through wedding or whatever? But again, I agree. I think Kody did realize how big of a situation it was going to be and that it would be a whole nother wedding. And that's not what he wanted. But that is what he initially presented to Meri at the picnic table with Robyn, saying, we want the kids involved. We want whatever. Maybe they were just talking about their immediate kids, but if we're talking about a family unity day, then this is the whole family. If we're going to celebrate the family, if the focus is on the kids, then it's got to be on all the kids.
And what's weird is Robyn wants her kids to be there so damn bad, but doesn't even tell the kids about any of this till after the marriage. So it's like, why? And why do they really need to be there for this? It's just kind of confusing. You already had the wedding, like Kody said. You guys already have been married spiritually. Yeah. So why does they need to be there for the legality of it? I really do believe it should have just been a paper shuffle, because then it's putting more emphasis on the legal marriage and what it represents. If they were going to slight Meri, that's how they would have slighted her, is by making a spectacle of the legal marriage, because then that's just affirming that it is a big deal to give up a legal marriage and then to be in a legal marriage. I was 100% on Kody's side with it. And I was 100% on Meri's side at the beginning when she's like, I don't really want to be there. I'm not really emotionally there yet.
I think that was the appropriate thing to do, to make it really cut and dry and clear. Like Kody said, it's a paperwork shuffle. It's not for celebrating. And that is what they did ultimately end up doing.
Although I was so mad at Robyn for pushing and pushing it. And she was still pushing it even when Kody said his piece and all that. She's like, well, I just think that my reason is valid. And I'm like, Robyn, just chill, okay? This is all happening so your kids can get adopted. So why don't you just take a back seat on this one and just let it happen the way that people are most comfortable with? You've already talked Meri into changing up her whole viewpoint. And that's what makes me wonder about the whole divorce in the beginning, is maybe Meri wasn't really considering all this, but it was a bug in her ear, just like this whole wedding thing was a bug in her ear. Meri seems easily persuaded. It's just a theory, but I just think that Robyn was being a little much when it came to having a, like, who cares? Why do you want a whole thing? Why do you want your kids there and all that? I mean, if it's about them getting adopted, make a big deal about the adoption day and not so much the legal marriage. Just because it's a gateway doesn't mean it's going to happen.
And I don't think that should be family unity day either, the day that Robyn and Kody get legally married. Like you said, it should be the day that they get adopted. That's more of a celebratory event. I feel like everything else is quiet anyways. I mean, we talk about these basement weddings. If we're talking about a secret half marriage, paperwork shuffle, whatever, this should be done in a parking lot as it was.
I've had a courthouse wedding. I've done everything on this channel, but I've had a courthouse wedding. That was my first wedding. And it's not longer than like 10 minutes. I mean, yes, my parents were there. Dean's parents were there. But it was not longer than like 10, 15 minutes tops. What, you really want to drag everybody to the courthouse just for a 10, 15 minutes tops wedding? And I don't know, it just seems like a little much. It's a little excessive. Maybe just go out to dinner with Robyn after, and that's your thing. But like Kody said, he don't even want to remember what day it's on.
I thought that was valid and fair. I think if what they're doing is about the kids like they say it is, I don't even think they should go out to dinner after. I think they should just go home and do whatever they usually do. I think Janelle called it like a business meeting that they were going to.
Yeah, she had the same view Kody had on it. It's just a paper shuffle and a business meeting. And to be honest, why even take the kids there with the dangling hope of getting adopted if indeed just because you get married does not guarantee these kids are going to get adopted? What if their dad fights back? There's so many what ifs. Why
That's what worried me so much about this legal divorce for Meri really in the first place, was that I wondered how much it was really thought through. Obviously, we don't know everything or anything really that happened behind the scenes, but I always wondered, how much did they know about David Jessup? I get that he wasn't seeing the kids as much as he was supposed to, but he was also an entire state away. I get you're doing something noble and everything to allow the kids to be able to be adopted, but this
Mhm.
does not guarantee that. This is just
Yeah.
the first step in the process, which helps the process to even be possible. It provides the opportunity for the kids to be adopted.
Mhm.
But it made me wonder. I don't know if I would be, I mean, I don't know if I know I wouldn't, could never, but
Well, it's like,
yeah, I
what
don't
if?
know.
What
Yeah.
if it didn't work out anyways, and then now Robyn has a legal marriage and you don't, and
Yeah.
what if the kids didn't even get adopted through this process? Nah, that's a whole mess in itself. I would tell the kids about all this because how
Yeah.
else are we gonna explain to the kids why this legal marriage is happening? You're gonna
Right.
have to tell them the truth and then take them all to the courthouse that day so they have all these hopes that Kody might be their dad just to maybe crush all those hopes. Robyn, it's suggested that she's done a lot of parental alienation, that she's done a lot of scripting with her kids, like, he's your dad, he's your dad. She's been very pushy with Kody and these kids. Even in the book, she said she didn't want to marry somebody unless they were willing to help her raise her kids and take on that dad role. It it's a little, it's a lot. It's a lot to
It's a
unpack
little bit
there.
of a lot.
It's
Yeah.
a little bit of a lot to unpack there. Like you said, they did go through with the courthouse wedding. That's just a paper shuffle. Maybe took just a few minutes. They walked in TMZ style. It looked like the cameras were shooting from way far behind, just trying to get a shot of them.
Mm.
It seemed like Robyn was okay with it at the end, although I don't know. She was being a nut the whole time before about the whole wedding situation. Yep. So they're legally married, but they were waiting for the paperwork. That's how fast this divorce and marriage went. It was like a
Mhm.
month for them to get divorced, and then they were married probably pretty instantly after that.
Yeah. Kody said right after the marriage in the parking lot, I think it wasn't in a confessional, but he said that for the sake of honoring his other wives, that he had to just fly over this legal marriage and look at it as just a piece of paper that allows him to adopt his children. So he
Mhm.
really simplifies the process and says that now that he has this piece of paper, he can go get a marriage license, which is another piece of paper, and he can put all those papers together and hope that that allows him to get the kids adopted. Robyn and Kody do have a nice moment where they both get emotional about the fact that this is the first step in adopting the kids. I thought that that was nice. It was a nice way to just refocus everything because it was just quite the crazy thing with
Mhm.
this whole secret marriage. But isn't that so Kody and Robyn? They're just always in secret, always running around like crazy maniacs, changing their minds 17 times, telling everybody 17 different things.
Right. They do decide to finally tell the kids of a possible adoption. They get Aurora, Brianna, and Dayton, and they get them all in, I don't know, was it Mary's living room? I don't even know whose living room.
Somebody
But
said,
they have Meri there to explain on bated breath, like, I went and divorced Kody.
and Aurora was like, "Are you okay?" She goes, "I'm perfect." She goes, "You're crying." She like pointed at her face.
Yeah. I would have been crying too, but it seems like I don't know if she was crying about the end of the marriage or if she was crying because she was so excited to tell the kids that they could get adopted. They made it seem like these kids are just begging for this every day or something. Like these kids are waiting on bated breath to get adopted by Kody. Like
No, they
they're
looked like they were all shook.
so they do.
Absolutely shook.
Yep, they do tell the kids that the divorce had to happen so then Robyn could legally marry Kody and that already happened and that's because they're trying to adopt the kids. And it was pretty silent at first. I mean, Aurora did immediately get up and hug one of them. I don't remember if it was Robyn or Kody. She seemed the most excited. The other two just seemed a little bit like, what? Although with Dayton's autism and his Asperger's, although I'll still call it Asperger's because my brother was diagnosed with the same thing. I know it's not really a thing anymore, but to me it is. They're very similar to me, my brother and Dayton, how they express things. Dayton just said, "Thank you, sir," something like that. He was very formal about it. You got to remember, he was like 14, 15. I mean, if they just would have waited 3 years, he didn't even really need to be adopted. He's
Right.
pretty close to the end. I know they wanted that last name, but you got to remember he was named completely after his dad. He has the same exact name. He's like David Preston Jessup the second or third or fifth, or I don't even know how many there are. It's got to be a little bit of a slight to have to now change your last name from Jessup to Brown. Now you're not the second or third or whatever anymore. They all seem to have relationship with their dad in a way. It might not be the strongest, But as we've seen in other seasons, when they've gone to visit their dad, they were excited to go visit him. And it was Robyn in the background, like, oh, my kids are going to go visit their dad. I hope it goes well. Girl, just
I
chill.
know. Always planting seeds of doubt.
Always. She's a damn gardener. Kody wanted more of a reaction out of Dayton, which, like, he has autism. Like, you're not going to get more than that. I barely get more than an okay from my brother. Even if I tell him something amazing, he'll just be like, okay. Like, he needed time to process. They tell these kids, and I just didn't get the feeling of they were super excited. I don't know if that they realized that also meant that their biological dad wasn't going to be considered their dad anymore on paper. I think that they might have wanted Kody to be their dad, but they might not have really wanted to lose that other parent too. Not sure if it was fully explained to them, because in what we saw, it wasn't. It was just made to be this whole big, you're going to be adopted.
Mhm.
You're going to be a
Yeah,
part of
I
the
think
Brown
that
family.
they
You're not supposed-
wanted to
Yeah.
feel integrated and be a Brown, and I do know Dayton wanted to legally change his name to Dayton, which is a mashup between David and Preston, the first and last parts of those. I don't know. I think they wanted to do all of those things, but I don't think any child really understands when you go into a legal process what the
Mhm.
legality is. And maybe it's really not for them to understand, but Robyn and Kody tried to say, at least legally, that they did not want to keep David from his children, although geographically, emotionally, physically, they were keeping him from his children. So
Right.
again, it's hard to tell what their intentions and motivations really truly were in this situation, but it's a lot for kids to take in. I think any kind of shift in this kind of paperwork shuffle.
Well, I take Dayton wanting to change his name with a grain of salt, because autistic kids are pretty literal. So if someone's calling you Dayton all the time, you probably do just want to change your name to that. It doesn't make sense for me to have a whole different name that's not the name that I'm being called 24/7. It probably just made more sense for him to just want to change his name to Dayton, because that's what everybody calls him.
I
Like,
think anybody, I mean, autistic or not, if someone calls you Leroy and your name don't have nothing to do with Leroy, you probably want to change your name to Leroy.
Mhm.
Like, I think that that just makes sense. And I think that that name honors his dad. I don't know if that's his intention. I don't know what his intention is in wanting to be called Dayton, but I think Dayton still honors David Preston. That's still, but it's all together.
Yes, I don't know. I'm still on the fence with the whole adoption thing. I'm not sure how necessary it truly was.
Hmm.
I just feel like it was in part a way for Robyn to just push this man out of everybody's life. Get him out of the way.
Yeah. I have no opinion really either way about the divorce, the adoption, the necessity of it. Even after going through all of this stuff and learning about this and talking about it with all you chick chatters, hard to wrap my head around if this was completely necessary. And I think that that's part two of why we wanted to deep dive into this. I mean, obviously, what Meri did was a great thing for these kids if we are going along the lines of the allegation sort of situation. But it makes you wonder, was all of this really necessary? Did it cause more harm than good in the long run? Because here we are right now. I think all those kids except Aurora are over 18. You know, not the ones she shares with Kody, obviously, but the
Brianna.
ones with David. Or,
Mhm.
yes, Brianna, sorry. But yeah, I think all those kids are old enough now. I think it really probably caused a lot more harm than good just to, what, change a couple of last names and birth certificates.
I don't know. The whole thing with me too is this guy wasn't even exercising much visitation. He's not really paying on these kids. What's the true need to adopt them out other than upon Robyn's death, right? Which isn't really
Right.
that likely. I get that it's a factor, but how likely is it? And it didn't happen, right? So, like, how likely is it? So,
Mhm.
other than all that, this guy's pretty much already out of your way. Why push this adoption so hard?
Yeah.
So I have questions, and I didn't answer them in this deep dive either, because Robyn keeps a lot of things close to the chest.
Mhm.
I found it interesting in some of these legal documents against David. So it says petitioner is currently at least 30 months behind in child support payments and owes $29,585.21 for the oldest child's medical expenses. This does not yet include any expenses for cosmetic surgery that Dayton needed due to his accident. Robyn has a lien on her house from these expenses. And what was offered to him,
The dissolution of his custody.
what was offered to him by Kody and Robyn in these documents was that if he was to get rid of his rights to the children, that all of this money, they wouldn't even worry
Kody
about
will
it.
pay for all of that.
Well, why didn't he just pay for it to begin with? Why did she need to take a lien out on her house? It's
Well,
just
that's
very
the
odd.
leverage. That's their legal leverage. But again, I mean, the legal world and the actual world, I think, are really separated in the Brown family. Especially, I mean, we're talking about legal divorces versus eternal divorces. They don't live in the legal world. They live in the religious world, in the plural world. So I think that the rules aren't quite the same, and it makes things look very strange.
So another part of this document said after the meeting, because there was a meeting between David and legal counsel and all this stuff. So after the meeting, petitioner spoke with the children. He would not let them say a word about wanting to be adopted and just press them for visits to tell him that this was in fact not what they wanted. The children attempted to tell them how they felt, stating that they really needed to tell him something. He later said this was proof that Robyn was forcing them to tell him that they wanted to be adopted. Petitioner then, after nearly 2 years of not seeing the children, said that he only wants to see them happy and would agree to the adoption if the children wanted it, is frantically accepting to see them for spring break. So he still wanted to see his kids, and he was leaving it up to them. But I can't help but feel like Robyn has influenced her kids a lot in what they wanted. I mean, if they were still seeing him even this much, that's more than a lot of people I know who don't
Yeah.
get adopted. Some
Yeah.
people have never even met their fathers and they don't get adopted by whoever. They just take on that role. Like I've said before, if Kody wants to put so much emphasis on the legal marriage doesn't mean anything, it's how we are as a family. Why put so much emphasis on these kids having the same last name?
Having a legal right to you. No, I totally get it. I mean, they don't really live in this legal world anyways. I just always fall back on upon somebody's death because that's the only thing that I can really make it make any logical sense. Otherwise, I don't think that this was really worth it for everybody.
This is another document that I believe was served to David by Kody and Robyn saying, you have over $30,000 in medical care owing and over 30 months in child support. Kody is willing to pay those costs if he adopts the children, and we would not need to litigate that issue separately. If this is something in which you would agree, please sign the relinquishment in front of a notary and send them back to my office. This would distinguish your legal rights to the children and also any financial responsibility. That's a bribe. I don't care what you want to call it. It's a bribe. You're telling a man he's about $60,000 in debt, and the only way he's going to get rid of that is to give up his rights. And then on top of that, you're having his children tell him that we want Kody to be our dad. Now, that's a bribe.
Yeah.
And that's sad to me. If this guy even wants to see them once a month, let him see him once a month. And it seems like he was also promised visitation with them, which we don't really see much of after this adoption plays out, at least not on the show. It's not really talked about very often. It seems like he hasn't really seen the kids since 2016, and we're in 2024.
It seems like that he hadn't seen the kids all the way up until around the time of the adoption. He was finally able to see his kids, and it seems like that may have been really the last time he saw them for a while.
And now I do understand that Dayton and Aurora are adults now, so they could go seek him out on their own. However, with Dayton, it's a little bit different because maybe he can't really get around. My brother just got a driver's license recently in his 30s, so it's not like he could just pick up and go without Robyn helping him orchestrate that.
Yeah, I think another thing too is like we've kind of talked around this. We haven't like said it explicitly, but a lot of people have talked about parental alienation going on with David, like from Robyn. And I think any adult child isn't inclined to just jump up excitedly when they turn 18 when they've been in a parental alienation situation. A lot of times there is like some brainwashing going on, or at the very least, some kind of emotional disconnection. You haven't seen this parent in years and years in most
Mhm.
cases. So I think with what happened there, if we want to legally call it alienation or just whatever, I mean, they hadn't seen their dad in a super long time. I can't imagine them being really excited to just like, oh, I'm going to run over and see my dad on my 18th birthday. They're probably also wondering, like, why hasn't this guy reached out? Where has he been? Is there phone calls that have been happening between any of them? Who knows?
It just wasn't set up for David to win regardless. Even
Yeah.
if he was doing everything he was supposed to, I feel like the show wasn't making it easy because it seemed like he would text Robyn or try to get a hold of the kids and we're filming and whatever. Especially when you're states away. It's not the easiest to be a parent that's always there. Especially with somebody with autism, it might be more awkward for Dayton to go reach out to his dad that he hasn't talked to in a while because what are you going to talk about?
Hmm.
So, yeah, I can see why the kids are not really reaching out at this point, but I also think the kids don't have all of the information about their dad, at least not from his side, not from Robyn, unless it's wild about her purity. It just seems like this man was set up for a bribe and for failure from the get. And I'm not saying that Robyn is wrong to fight for her kids. I think most mothers do fight for their kids pretty hard. It just feels a little bit off, I think, to a lot of people that this is kind of how it came about. This is how fast it came about. It seems like this was really fast. And I don't know if it's just the show portraying it as really fast, but within the same season, we're getting a divorce. I mean, well, the end of one season, we're getting a divorce, a finalized divorce, a marriage, and
And
adoption.
adoption. Yeah.
So it was fast. I
All
mean,
in season 9. Yeah. Tune in.
then we go to the adoption of the kids.
In season 9, episode 8, it starts with the whole family going to sign adoption papers. So when I say the whole family, I'm talking about the moms and Kody. The biggest concern that was presented at the time in signing the adoption papers, and this was not to sign them or to be completed, this was to start the process of adoption papers. They're back in that lawyer's office.
Mhm.
And the only thing here was that they were worried about the dad protesting. And we've talked about what was going on here and what the legal leverage was. So they used that legal leverage of you're behind in all of this child support. There's back and forth about if he thought he was required to pay that or not, but he was behind either way. And now Dayton had all these medical things that he wasn't paying on either. Again, back and forth on if he was supposed to be doing that. So that was the only thing. And the only thing that really wrapped up in that was, I guess, David, as soon as he found out that his parental rights would be terminated, he also backed off from the process of what's called like a step parent adoption. So there
Mhm.
was some things that got held up in that process, but on the adoption day or the beginning of the adoption day, they do go in and they have the papers in hand from David. He has signed everything over. He's agreed to it. So this does give them the green light to actually start the whole process.
And as a side note, Robyn did say that he was avoiding being served because she was
Yeah.
trying to serve him for a while. And that doesn't sound like a man that wants to give up his rights. It sounds like a man that was pushed into a corner to give up his rights, whether it was by his kids telling him that they wanted to be adopted out, whether it was by Kody and Robyn's bribe. Either way, this man seemed to be avoiding it because he didn't really want to do it. I think
Yeah.
he didn't want to do it. I think that he was kind of pushed into it. So you
Right.
got to give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt for signing the papers because it seems like he was stuck between a rock and a hard place. What's he supposed to do? Kidnap these kids, take them to Montana? There was not really much he could do, especially if the kids were asking for it.
Yeah.
Whether it was coaxed by Robyn or not. I mean, if they're asking him for it, he really doesn't have much to go off of. He can assume that they're being coaxed and that
Mhm.
he's being alienated from their lives, but there's really not much else that can be done there.
Well, and especially at that time, this was almost 10 years ago, parental
Mhm.
alienation was like barely even a word at that point. That really is a word that got popularized probably about 10 years ago. It's always been around, of course, but people have been litigating about it a lot more recently in custody cases and things like that. So, again, to go up against TLC, to go up against the whole Brown family when you are 30 months behind in child support and you owe money, it just didn't look good for anybody. I mean, they really kind of had him backed into a corner at that point. I think he had to just hope that his relationship with his kids would be dependent on his relationship with his kids and nothing that had anything to do with the legal system. They start the process, and the lawyer informs Robyn that the 3 oldest kids that Kody is adopting are not only going to have the Brown last name, but that they're going to have new birth certificates printed with Kody's name as the father. And I guess, yeah, sure, that's part of the process, but it made me think back to that purity episode and how Robyn was so adamant that she had made this mistake and she should have had all her kids with Kody and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, wow, Robyn is probably having a moment right now. All the stars are aligning for her. And she did cry. She was emotional about it. She was really excited about the birth certificate
When
thing.
is she not crying?
True. She is sobbing Robyn. But so this is when we learn about Dayton's name being kind of a mashup of David and Preston. And Robyn also lets the lawyer know that they also want a request for Dayton's name to be changed to David Dayton Brown. Dayton asked Kody, "What would you name me if I was your son?" And he said David. He said he'd name him what he's already named. So he's going to be David Dayton. And Christine is so excited when they're in the lawyer's office getting the adoption paperwork started to send over to the judge. She leaped up. She's over there watching everything get signed. Janelle's just seated like a normal, regular person. Not Christine. She was so excited. So they get everything signed, and the final hurdle essentially is for the judge to okay everything. So then they go and tell the kids about this, and they're just as much in shock again that Kody has signed the papers. They're all kind of in a daze and, whichever, which maybe that's just their reactions because at this point they kind of knew this was coming a little bit, but I don't know. Dayton says that he was excited, and I think this is also the same moment where they share that Robyn is pregnant. So in the same sitting, basically, with Robyn's little family, they share, hey, we're sending the papers over to the judge. We're going to really try to adopt you. And also, you're going to have a new sibling.
Yeah. Here's all these things at once.
Complete craziness. With the whole adoption process, I think the next thing that happens is because Dayton is above 15 or 16, I don't remember the exact age that they were talking about. I'm upset that I didn't write it down, but it's 15 or 16. But because he was at that age at the time, they do recommend that the children that are above that age also kind of sign over a document essentially that consents that says, I would like to be adopted. I'm happy with the situation going on. So they actually bring Dayton into the lawyer's office. They do a whole scene about that. Basically the same thing I just went over with the parents. They did with Dayton, Robyn, and Kody all together. And Dayton said at the end of it that he felt pretty proud of himself and pretty cool. It was the first adult document he ever signed, but he also talked about feeling the pressure of what it's like to be an adult and that these are really big decisions to be made. He acknowledged that he realized he was thinking about the future and that this means that Kody's going to be his dad. And even the lawyer was like, so you already have the love and admiration of Kody, but now Kody also has the legal backing of a parent as well. He's legally responsible to take care of you financially. If you do something wrong and illegal, he can be liable for you. He explains what you're entitled to as being somebody's child legally. So he sits there through it all, and they ask him if he agrees, and he's like, yeah, I just want to know, do we sign the papers in here or do we sign the papers somewhere else? It's so just cut and dry and clear, right? We're not messing around here.
Right.
So they sign all those papers, and I think that brings us into the next episode, which is episode 8, which is the true adoption day, where they go in with the judge. They all sit down. They bring their whole entire family, which I think is cute. I mean, that's necessary if you're joining the family, if this is the family unity day. And I also noticed that Christine's mom was there.
Well, she was living with her at the time.
Oh, yes, she did move in. You're right. Okay, so that makes more
Yeah.
sense. I forget because they never really film her anymore, but They haven't filmed Christine a lot in this season. A lot of this 9th season revolves
Mhm.
around the adoption process and what's going on. So a lot of Meri and Robyn.
And luckily for Meri, the divorce was worth it for what she wanted at the time. I'm
Mhm.
sure that she felt great about them getting adopted with all the
Mhm.
information that they have, of course. But the kids were adopted, and that
They
was
all
kind of
show up
that.
in their little dresses, so cute, and Aurora's actually holding Kody's hand. So they all go through the process. The judge has no issue. It's actually a really quick thing, but I was surprised they let the camera crew come in. The whole thing was filmed, the whole adoption. It was pretty easy. Kody and Robyn are even pretty astounded about how quick it was. I guess there was a lot of anticipation that Dayton especially might have to speak to the judge privately in his quarters, maybe that all the children would have to speak to the judge privately just to talk about that they were okay with being adopted, but none of that ended up having to happen. The judge just okayed all of it, and I think it
Yeah.
was Aurora or Brianna, one of them said, "We're officially brownies."
It did surprise me that they didn't have to say anything because I've actually watched one of my cousins get adopted. We all had to say something. All of us kids had to walk up there and say something. I don't know if that was just my aunt being weird, but my cousin Andrea got adopted by my aunt, and she did have to go up there and say, I want to be
Mhm.
adopted and this and that. She was
Yeah.
about 10-ish,
I know
12
it's a
tops.
possibility, and it's something that they were all considering that that might have to happen for them too, so
But I didn't get why Robyn was so pressed about it. My biggest role has been to protect them, and I'm also trying to protect them from getting up on the stand. And it's like, if this is what they really want, just let them go
yeah.
up there and say that's
Just
what they
go
want.
tell
That's all they're going to ask of them.
Mhm.
It's not
Yeah.
a big
Again,
deal.
I think their family and their religion and things like that, I think they're just scared of the law and all of that, so I think they just see that as trying to protect their family by them not interacting with people like that at all. A lot of times they're homeschooled, they don't want them interacting with any of the general public. It's
I
pretty,
guess.
sheltered. But yeah, no, I agree. I think everything that's going on is legit. I mean, dude was 30 months behind child support. Kody was financially supporting the kid. Everything was legit. Again, I don't know if this whole adoption had to happen because it didn't change anything. The only thing it changed was that Meri got a legal divorce and probably spawned the whole process, or at least validated or confirmed to her that her marriage was probably not going to remain good.
Right. Which gets us into the aftermath of the
The
adoption,
aftermath.
which we all know the wives started dropping like flies pretty much 10 years later. We got Christine leaving, we had Janelle shortly after, and then Meri grudgingly by the feet dragged out of her marriage. So it was a whole process. It did have a snowball effect on the whole family. It wasn't immediate, but it was something that happened over time. It made it so, yes, Kody is the father of these kids, but remember, why did they move to Flagstaff? In part because Dayton wanted to go to college in Arizona. Why else move from your cul-de-sac perfect little setup unless you're trying to be a helicopter parent for your kid, which I get it. Your kid with autism, it's hard to be away from them because you want to be able to be there to protect them. They don't always have the best social cues, whatever. You don't have to uproot the whole family for that. I know they wanted all these properties. So what? They could build separate homes. They already did that in Vegas. Unless they were going to do
Right.
this mega mansion, there was really no need to buy all this property and do all this stuff. I don't know. It just seemed a little weird to me. They had a good setup in that cul-de-sac. So yeah, we watched the whole family move to Arizona and then pretty much move on from each other.
Yeah.
And sadly, when it comes to David Jessup, we have learned recently that he does have leukemia. And
Mhm.
I don't even know if his kids know or if anything's been relayed to them.
They gotta know, right? I mean, I know that that's what's been reported, that there's no established connection that they know, but I mean, I know.
That
You
doesn't mean
know.
that they know. You're really
215 chick chatters are about to know.
I know.
Like,
It doesn't mean though that they do know. Maybe they've
it's
really
true.
separated themselves that much. Maybe they don't even have his number. We don't really know their relationship with him. It's never spoken about
Mhm.
since the whole adoption thing. He's barely been mentioned. They've barely had visits. According to a lot of people, articles, whatever, they haven't seen him since 2016. So we don't know, but they might not know that he has leukemia. I would like to think that if they knew that, they would visit him more, or that there would be a mention of him or whatever. Not saying that maybe this isn't happening behind the scenes. I don't know. It's a little eerie to me, but he is fighting leukemia.
GoFundMe out there if anyone
Yeah.
wants to contribute to it. It does look like it's still open. I
Yeah,
think it
I'll
was
link
opened
it.
about a year ago, but it does look like it's still receiving donations.
Yep, his sister posted it. I will link it. It doesn't have its goal. Its goal is 50,000 and it's at about 8,000. It was made, I think, about a year ago or so, but it does say that Preston went in for a routine eye exam and his doctor saw something that concerned him and sent Preston in for testing. And it turns out that he had chronic myeloid leukemia. So he's really going through it. And to be honest, it looks like he's got a lot of other kids now. It looks like he's got at least 4 kids outside of his kids with Robyn. So that puts him at a whopping 7 kids in total that he's had. There is an update to this leukemia thing too on January 12th of this year. It says, I've had people reach out asking what's going on with Preston, which I'm guessing this is his sister speaking for him.
Yep.
So I thought I'd give an update. These last couple of months have been pretty difficult. Dealing with insurance has been a huge hassle. As of November of last year, he was dropped. So that's part of why I think the GoFundMe is pretty important. Still waiting after all this time to hear back if the renewal has gone through and haven't heard a word. Since he's been taking the chemo pill, running out of his meds will be deadly. Without insurance to cover the costs, there's no way he can afford the meds he needs. The other big thing is the side effects that have taken a toll on him and keep him up at night in excruciating pain, but at the same time keeps his numbers where they need to be. To everyone that knows him, if asked, he would smile and tell them things are good. I'm happy he tries to keep positive, but also thought it's worth explaining his side so people can know and pray for help whenever they can. We are beyond grateful to all those who've prayed, donated, reached out, etc. You have no idea how much this helps. Please continue to keep him in your prayers and donate if you are able. Thank you so much for all the love and support you've shown. According to the original post, he needs to take these pills. How many times was it? Oh, for the next 10 to 15 years to try to stay alive.
Yeah.
So it's serious. What he's got going on is very, very serious. I really hope that maybe that's part of why Robyn has backed off of him, because it's not worth the allegations at this point. This is almost a dying man. You didn't even have to adopt these kids out. This is really sad, to be honest. To hear that this is what's going on with him, it's really sad. And it's sad that he's now has no legal rights over his kids to try to get in contact with them. It's all based upon Robyn or the kids' wants. And who knows what they know? Who knows how much they know? We don't know. We just know that they're in Arizona. He's in Montana. He's got other kids and a new wife and stuff. And I don't know. It just feels like a really sad ending to all this. I know that the adoption was a fun, great thing for the Browns, and that's something that they're all very proud of. But at the same time, I feel like there is a sadness to it. Just like with Meri's divorce. Yes, there is a great outcome of her divorce, which was adopting these kids, but there is also a sadness to it. There, two things can be true at once.
Yeah. I think, Meri has always, again, tried really hard to focus and maintain that all of this is about the kids. I mean, the purpose of it was for the children, but that doesn't take out the emotional part of change and of having to adjust to different things. Even the other sister wives, Janelle and Christine, were affected by this, obviously in much more minimal ways, but everybody has to adjust and change when something changes. A legal marriage is an important thing. I know that they look at marriages differently. They don't live in the legal world like a lot of us do, but Meri went through a good amount of suffering. She does say that in the end, she thinks that it was all worth it to be able to have the kids be adopted. So the kids are happy. If Meri can justify that it was worth it, I think maybe they can say that it was worth it. But on the side of David, Preston, Jessup, I think I don't know if it was worth it. I don't know if giving up $30,000 in debt was necessarily worth a whole relationship with his kids. I think being adopted by Kody, just like being divorced from Kody for Meri, makes it different. Now Kody is responsible for you. Now Kody is the one who needs to, have a relationship with you so that he can maintain his responsibility to you. There's no other reason, especially being states away, for the biological dad to really be around anymore. And that's how it goes. That's how it ends. That's what happens.
And the sad thing is, if something happens to Preston or anything, I mean, these kids might have already lost out on a relationship with him. They might have resentment in the long run towards Kody and Robyn if they learn that, yeah, their dad has leukemia and then he didn't get to bond with him much before he died. Either way, you can take the kid and give him a whole new dad, but they still biologically come from somewhere and they're going to have questions about where they biologically came from. They're going to wonder about their family on that side. They're going to wonder about their heritage. They're going to wonder about different things. They'll probably get a 23andMe. Like, who knows? But I understand that adoptive parents have a huge role in kids' life, and thank God for them a lot of the time. It's not a bad thing to adopt kids or anything like that. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that there's still a sadness to it. There's still some things that these kids might be missing out on because of this. Kody was always going to be there for them, but was it worth losing the tie that was forcibly there with their dad legally? Because Robyn and Kody were not entitled at that point to make these trips happen, to make any type of visitation happen once the adoption happened. They could have just went on a couple and then they were cut off at that point because he doesn't have any legal rights. They don't have to do anything for him. And if Robyn can't stand him as much as she says that she can't stand him, then who is to make her put her kids and not protect them from their own father?
The one that she claims is abusive
but proceeded to have 2 more children with him. That's why I take a lot of what Robyn says with a grain of salt, mainly because they've rewritten history I don't know how many times. But I'm not saying that she wasn't in this situation, because she definitely could have been. She could have been a victim on the run. But at that point, with this whole legal marriage that she had to him, he still had rights to the kids. I mean, there are many people in that situation. I don't know. At the end of this, there's really more questions than answers. There's a lot of sadness because with the happiness of them becoming Browns and integrating with the family, which already happened. I mean, I don't know why a last name matters.
I just wonder if this was all worth it. To be a Brown. I mean, you guys could have changed Dayton's name for any reason.
And Christine and Janelle and Robyn all changed their name to Brown before ever being legally married. At some point, if the kids got older and wanted to change their name, they could have. I mean, it's not like the kids are running around the house like, I'm a Brown, I'm a Brown, I'm a Brown. Like, I don't know. I see both sides of it, but I do think that there is underlining sadness. I think we all wonder about the whole legal divorce, the adoption. Was everything necessary? How does Meri actually feel about it? Which I think we saw how Meri actually felt about it. I think she was very conflicted. I think if it wasn't for those kids, she never would have done it.
Well, I think that's where we all are. I mean, the whole thing is kind of complex and it's confusing. On one end, we're talking in really simple legal terms about a paperwork shuffle and just an adoption and just a last name and whatever. And then on the other end of that, we're talking about the meaning of all of those words. A divorce, like a end of a matrimony. I think Meri was reading the divorce papers and it was like, this matrimony is hereby distinguished for eternity. It was like really serious. So when we talk about the emotions that are behind all this, paperwork shuffle that they want to keep calling it, I mean, these are adoptions, are attachments to parental relationships and detachments from marital relationships. These things come with emotion, no matter how much you try to minimize it and downplay it and say, this is a paperwork shuffle, this is a last name change, this is a legality in case one of us dies. This is a serious thing that I think, much like the Browns usually do, was completely downplayed and blown past without much real consideration into what it actually means.
What I think is interesting is all of this got set in motion because they were concerned about what happens if Robyn dies. And now at the end of this, we have a dying man who was denied the rights to his children. And at the end of the day, it just don't really completely sit right with everybody. I mean, that's fine. Damage is done. This was all done 10 years ago. But it's just interesting the irony of the fact that Robyn is still living, breathing, sobbing, still the same Robyn.
Mm-hmm.
That was a bar. Now this man who she's thrown everything at, said he's been her abuser, stole her purity, negligent to the kids, no visitation, no child support, this, that, and the other. Now he is literally looking death in the face.
Yeah.
It's just wild. And it's
And
sad.
has been completely alienated from his kids.
It's sad. I mean, either way you put it, it's sad. It's sad for everybody involved, except for, I guess, Robyn. But I hope that she has had some kind of kindness towards him in this leukemia diagnosis. I would like to think that. I mean, these are all religious people, so I would like to think that they have some kind of empathy for him. And even the other sister wives, if they've heard any news about him, I mean, Christine's related.
I guess Christine shared the GoFundMe on her page when it happened. And I guess people were kind of taken aback that Christine was the one that shared it. I think that makes sense. People were saying that Kody and Robyn should have been the one to share it because they have a closer connection to David. I think that that's hogwash. I think that David probably hates them and they probably hate David. But Christine is his family, his first cousin even. I mean, I think to people who are not in plural marriages, that's a pretty closely related family member usually.
And I'm not saying that Robyn maybe shouldn't have shared it just out of respect for her children, but it's also muddy to claim all these things against somebody and then just because they're dying to switch your tune. Robyn's not going to switch her tune. She's been singing the same damn bird song she's been singing since she got in the family. So I'm not holding my breath on Robyn, but yeah, I mean, it's a somber thing, but this is kind of how we have to end it on this sad note because really,
that's the reality.
Yeah.
Can't change the facts.
This is more of allegations. This is more like opinion because we don't have a ton of information that's solid on this. We can only make our own opinions about it. Like we said before, David has never came out and said anything about Robyn, Kody, the kids. Nothing public. It's always just a source close to, which could be them, but we can't really assume that. You know, that's just what it is. With the catfishing episode, we will probably have more definitive information on things. It'll be a lot more cut and dry than this. Well, our opinions might be a little bit more cut and dry and a little bit
facts.
Less back and forth.
Totally. I think our opinions will be. This is just a complex situation. And the way they presented it, they gave us this legal baloney and then they gave us this emotional stuff underlying but didn't want to acknowledge it. So I think everyone's going to walk away from this feeling complex. Plus there's no right answer here. I think there's a world where it makes sense for the Browns to have adopted, I say the Browns, not Kody, the family to have adopted those kids, and there's a world where it makes sense for everything to just have kept on going. So yeah, I mean, we thank you all for sticking around and listening with us. We hope that you learned a little something new about the Browns. And if not, then we hope you enjoyed listening to us rehash it all.
This is a long one, even for us, but thank you guys for joining us. And hopefully you subscribe. We still have our subscriber goal of 250. So
yeah, we're getting close. Welcome to all of our new subscribers and our old ones. Welcome back.
Yes. And hopefully you got a little bit of entertainment out of this. Maybe your opinions have shifted just like ours. Mine keep going back and forth like a damn ping pong.
Yeah, tell us what you think. We really have been enjoying our comment section getting lit up a lot more lately than usual. So it's been really fun interacting with everyone. Anne's usually the one who's been fielding those most often, but I try to get in there when I can.
Lately I've been slacking on that because all the editing. So sorry.
Yeah. Share your comments. We really want to know, has this changed how you feel or has it just validated how you feel? Do you think this was necessary? We have a hard time settling on something. Do you guys feel the same way?
Right. And David, Jessup, or family, if you are watching this and you want to give an update, we're open and free and very impartial. And we barely have a following. So you're safe.
Chick chat chicks.
Or even Robyn, if you want to give your side, we're open to hearing it. I'm open to hearing Robyn's sides of things. I'm not on anybody's side. I just feel bad for the dude.
Yeah. I just want to have an opinion. Damn it.
I just need things to be more clear.
All right, Chick Chatters. Well, it has been a fun one, a little bit of a doozy, but it's been fun to go over all of this with you all. We hope
Alright.
that you enjoyed it. And if you have watched this whole thing and you are not subscribed to us, what are you doing? Just hit the subscribe button right now. We'll see you on another video soon. Bye.